I'm going to call the September 11th, 2025 Audit and Finance Committee to order. The meeting is being live streamed. Members of the public participating remotely may use the raise hand feature in Zoom. If you're using a phone and like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. Let's move on to approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes for April 10th, 2025 meeting. Any changes to the minutes of that meeting? No. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Call the question. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Hurley.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes unanimously. We're going to move on to the summary of investment as of July 31st, 2025. Ms. Weinberg.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Hurley, thank you for joining our committee. We're happy to have you. I will be presenting a summary of investments through July 31st, 2025, as well as give a brief market update. The current market environment, we're sitting at a Fed funds target range of 4.25% to 4.5%, but it's currently 80% market expectation that the Fed will cut rates by 25 basis points this September 17th. There's a small percentage of analysts that believe that it may be a 50 basis point cut also, but the Fed, their target is 4% for this 2025 year. The economy does remain strong. GDP is currently at 3.3%. Normal GDP is considered 2 to 3%, and we're at 3.3%, so that's considered strong growth. Our unemployment rate for July was 4.2%, which is still under their 5% target. But in August, that number came out at 4.3%, so that kind of cemented the Fed's reasoning to cut rates by that 25 basis points. Current inflation is at 2.7%, which is well above the Fed's target of 2%. So it may remain slightly elevated, and during that period of time, that will influence the pace of cuts, which we will see occurring, as of now anyway, between 2026 and 2027. Our investment strategy has not changed. We're still keeping $5 million in our operating account, which is earning us 1%. Therefore, we try to keep that to a minimum. Everything else, all the other funds we receive, either ad valorem, the state funds, or mortgage-backed security paydowns, which are now about $1.5 million a month, all those funds are getting put into money market funds that are liquid, AAA rated, super safe, and we have access to those funds on a daily basis. We're also receiving in June of 2026 $60 million of influx of cash, and those are our callable agency bonds. So those aren't paying down the way mortgages do. Mortgages pay down monthly. These are just a full call. So that is their maturity date. They were 5-year bonds, so we are receiving the $60 million in June of 2026, and then we're going to have another $35 million come in between January and March of 2027. So that'll be a nice influx of cash. And we're earning 4.21% average on those money markets. And I know, Mr. Bergeron, you had asked for some details. Last we spoke on the money markets. They are invested actually in U.S. Treasuries, government agencies, and repurchase agreements that are AAA rated. So that's how they're earning their 4.21% yield. And they're huge funds. We're in Fidelity is a $62 billion fund. Excuse me. Dreyfus is a $119 billion fund, and Goldman Sachs is a $240 billion fund. Lastly, they're very flexible. We have until 4:45 every day, 4:30, 4:45 to do any redemptions or purchases into those money markets, which even though we like to close cash by morning/lunchtime, sometimes if, in case an emergency comes up, it's good to have the access to the cash, because there are money markets that close out at 11:30. So that's why we specifically pick these funds. Just a word on interest rates. We see that overnight is still at the 4.25. The 2-year and the 3-year dipped. The 2-year dipped to 3.54%, and the 3-year dipped to 3.47%. And these are numbers as of yesterday, by the way. My July numbers are obviously already dated. Then we see the yield curve moving up as it normally would, as the 5-year is at 3.59%, the 7-year is at 3.78%, and the 10-year is at 4.04%. But all of these funds, all of these yields are still, or these maturities are still less than overnight funds. We only see the pickup above the overnight funds at the 20-year mark and the 30-year mark. We don't invest that far out, but the 20-year is at 4.65 and the 30-year is at 4.69%. This is a snapshot of our activity through July 31st. We've earned $13.5 million in interest earnings. And we just closed out August. We earned $1.2 million in August, so we're now at $14.7 million for fiscal '25. We have one more month left, and I'm estimating in fiscal '25 we'll earn between $15.7 and $15.9 million. Our budgeted earnings was only $6.3 million, but the reasoning for that was we had expectations of higher cuts this year in the Fed funds rate, so we weren't expecting to make as much money as we did. So that's good news. Our yield on investments is 1.61%. Reason being, we invested back in 2020, 2021, and 2022, so those are very lower yielding mortgage-backed securities. In fact, the last time we made a long-term investment was in March of 2022. Everything since then has been going into short-term money market funds.
How long are we locked into those where you're getting the 1.61? Are we locked in for any time frame?
We are. Those are, per policy, we look at the portfolio as a whole. So we can't be longer than a 3-year duration. And when we purchased these, and that's how the policy reads, is you have to look at the date of purchase. What is your duration? What is the estimated time to receive your principal? And at the time, it was 3, 4, 5 years. So as a part of the whole portfolio, we were less than 3 years duration. But rates spiked up 525 basis points in about 18 months, and that just really, when rates go up, the payments go down. So now we're seeing $1.5 million a month that we're getting back from these mortgages, when in the past it used to be 4. So that's what's causing them to extend. And PFM will be discussing this. They will be presenting after myself. That's one of the things we've asked them to do, is take a look at our bonds on a quarterly basis, on a bond-by-bond basis, to see when we can expect those funds.
Okay, thank you.
But it's a good question, because also we should, in all but the most, unusual circumstances, our policy is to hold to maturity. So.
Yes, it is.
And then remind me, are we marking to maturity, or are we marking to market? In other words, when we value, when you have the NAV, how are those marked?
We marking to market.
Marked to market, okay, thanks.
Yeah, but we actually, that's another thing we're going to be speaking with PFM on.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All right, thanks.
So even though we're holding to maturity, we're marking to market?
we were. As of now, we're kind of in a hold status on that, because we're not sure if the system is calculating correctly. So we kind of put a hold on that. So we're going to have some Treasury IT experts take a look at it, just to make sure that everything's being accounted for correctly. But we are hold to maturity. We're not selling at a loss. So ideally, we have 2 paths that we can take. We can either hold to maturity, get those funds back at par, which is a 0 loss, or as rates come down, bond by bond, take a look at which are feasible to sell without a loss. We can do that as well, and then put those funds into the money market.
I don't think it makes a big difference either way, but I think maybe we looked at this 4 or 5 years ago, what other districts or state agencies do in terms of marks, if it should be, and I think we did determine it's mark to market versus mark to par.
It is mark to market,
Okay.
but a lot of them are doing, I know Southwest and St. John's, they're doing it annually, and we were doing
I
it
gotcha.
quarterly.
Okay,
So I don't think we need to do it quarterly, and that's the question that's
yeah, I
up
think
in
so
the air.
too.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
it doesn't, it's not like we're issuing, well, it's not like we're issuing bonds, so it really
No.
doesn't matter what the, honestly, it doesn't make a big difference in terms
No,
of the mark.
because it's not actual money lost or money gained. It's just paper.
Right.
And then our weighted yield is 2.69%. And I did just want to mention that as compared to my last presentation, the invested percentage went up, but that's only because we're nearing fiscal year end, we're spending money, we're not having any ad valorem coming in. So you're going to see that percentage increase slightly, but not the dollar amount because we're not investing in long term. Everything's going into cash and cash in equivalents. And we typically see between November 15th and January, 80% of our ad valorem funds come in. So once those funds come in and we put them in the money markets, then you'll see these percentages flip.
Quick question for you, Lucy. The agencies that are maturing in '26 and early '27, I assume those are some of the really low yielding instruments that we bought back in '20 and '21?
2020, 2021, yeah,
Okay.
they're the lower yielding. Because agencies always are less yielding than mortgages. Mortgages had a much better pickup back in the day before rates went to zero, and we were doing phenomenally well with them. There was never an issue, and they're still paying down. It's just the whole issue is they're paying down slower.
Right, because people aren't moving.
Right, exactly.
No,
So
they're locked in place, so yeah. that's-
exactly. So
And that's a secondary risk that bond holders never really thought about, is the fact that when you've got such a massive move, that you're not going to get the sort of historic pay downs and sort of maturities.
If you're trading before.
Yeah.
right, and we've never. I mean, I know my brokers that I work with. They do stress tests up and down 300 basis points. They don't do 500. That's just unheard of. So that's the position we find ourselves in. My next slide, this is our portfolio breakdown. As of July, we had $467.8 million. This is between cash and investments. I took a look back 5 years ago at 7/31/2020. We had $658 million. And in 2021, we had 626. So obviously we're spending down fund balances. We need the cash. We're not in the position we used to be 10 years ago where projects were just at the beginning of their stages, their design stages, and we could go out 2-3 years, sit on those funds, get them back as necessary. We're just not there. We're just spending the funds, so we need access to them. Hence, that's why we're not investing longer now. The other thing I did want to mention, though, when I looked back last year in 2024, we had only $399 million versus our $467.8 million now. And a large part of that is due to staff being very efficient and very quick at turning around those reimbursement requests. Because back in the day, again, we could front $10, $20, $30 million, and staff would put together these packages, say, quarterly. Well, now, as soon as we send maybe Phillips Heavy a $10 million construction payment, they're on that very quickly. And we see the return of those funds usually within 4 weeks. So they're constantly turning around these reimbursement packages, which really helps our cash flow quite a bit. And then my last slide. Thank you. This is benchmark comparisons. We compare ourselves to the 1 to 3 year Treasury index, the cash index. As we know, the S&P, it's the 4.28%. We're at 4.21%, so we're not too far off from that. I took a look at St. John's and Southwest. St. John's is in the local government investment pool. They're in cash. They're in the SBA money market funds. Southwest Florida, they're in also the short-term sector. They're not in the 3 to 5 year sector, which right now it makes them look a lot better. But back then, it didn't, because they weren't taking that additional risk on of moving into mortgages or callable agencies, which in a normal market, that has a huge uptick in basis points as compared to overnight funds. And that is it for my presentation. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thanks, Lucy. I think, I would just summarize a few points, which pretty much is basically nothing's changed over the past couple of years in terms of our policy.
Correct.
The overnight funds are generating the best returns for us. You said something interesting, which you'd have to go out to 20 years to get the same returns that the money market. So that just tells you where. So we'll keep doing that. And then the money market funds that you're in, they're liquid. They have highly rated safe assets. And they're managed with the largest institutions.
Correct.
So, and then as we get cash from maturing bonds, those will not be invested long-term either.
No,
Okay.
they will not be. They're going to go into the money market funds because we need to remain liquid to fund these capital projects.
Okay.
And that is what we're here for.
Yep.
So,
You guys have any more questions?
Nope.
Your operation, you're keeping 5 million in the operations, and
yeah, we try to keep the bare minimum because it's only 1%.
yeah, that seems quite low.
The 1%?
Yeah.
It's a bank.
Hmm?
It's
Well, I know that, but
they
You're
don't-
talking about in terms of spending, and which is why they are drawing funds every night from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was our minimum that we thought to be safe.
Yeah.
To keep funds in there. But Truist used to give us 10 basis points, 0.1%.
Yeah.
And they increased that to 1%. But, so we try to keep the very bare minimum in there.
well, I know I went through that, and I have 64 different companies, and we ended up moving to a bank that give us a lot more than 1%.
Really?
Yes. I don't know whether y'all check that out, see if there's any opportunity, but it ended up being a lot of work because I had to change 64 bank accounts, but
It is a lot of work.
sometime it probably be a good idea to check with several banks and see what return they'll give you.
Absolutely. And we've been with Truist for quite a while, and we did a RFP several years ago. And I know Chase was one of the banks, but they were super expensive. Like, for example, with Truist, they give us free safekeeping. That's where they house all of our mortgages and agencies. And that's typically, well, it was about $25,000 a year. So, I mean, that's a savings.
Yep.
So they do give us here and there because of our relationship. But at the same time, we're also receiving a lot of emails and queries from other banks that they want to perhaps strike a relationship with us.
Yeah.
So we would have to go with the process of doing an RFP. And yes, it is a lot of work, but if we can get a better relationship, better service, better earnings, then it would be worth it.
Absolutely.
You don't have to provide an advertisement for your bank, but Lucy, you might want to talk to Mr. Bergeron afterwards and find out.
Okay.
Although
I'm
now we
curious.
should consider Mr. Bergeron's bank account is a lot larger than our bank account. Thanks, Lucy.
Okay, thank you very much. I would now like to introduce Jeremy Needfelt of PFM, and he will be presenting on investment policy considerations.
And for the record, we had no public comment on this item, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman, fellow committee members. Jeremy Needfelt with PFM. Pleasure to be here. Primary focus of the discussion here is to talk through some suggested changes staff has that we've reviewed to the current investment policy. Just for a brief background for the committee, PFM is your municipal advisor. So we typically advise on debt issuances, the COPS, as well as municipal financial products and things that are associated with proceeds from debt issuance. So we did look at the investment policy and the changes that have been made specifically to House Bill 3 in 2023 that was implemented to promote some anti-ESG measures as the state's policy to keep environmental, social, and governance laws from inhibiting the decision-making process for those investments. Pecuniary factors are required when investments are made by any state agency or subject to residents of the district. And these are essentially just restricting staff from investing in bonds that prohibit contracting with a ESG score that would negatively impact the rating or the return. So if there are factors outside of elements that would impact the risk or the return on an investment, those factors cannot be considered by staff. So those were things that we brought into the policy, and we used the state's language specifically out of Section 110-84 as our recommended change. Would you like me to read that in for the record? The change here? Okay. Some other factors we looked at were sector allocations. So we reviewed here a sample table on the right that had a very similar look and feel to what the district has. I want to note a couple of differences here. Supranationals are not used. Supranationals are things like the EU or UN or WTO instruments. Those are not part of the district's current policy, nor is there a recommendation to make them part of the policy. Dropping asset-backed securities entirely is a notable difference, but that's not a risk factor we think causes concern. There's also a suggestion here to combine CDs and savings accounts. We think that makes sense to have that as a blended category. And the one primary difference here, as Lucy mentioned, was to increase flexibility to allow for more utilization of money market funds. So you can see that here, our recommendation from staff would be to go from 50% to 75% of your investment portfolio. There were a couple of suggested changes to internal controls, specifically a quarterly review on a bond-by-bond basis. That looks at the duration. It looks at what the yield to maturity is, or the hold value. Total return is how those bonds are valued since they're buy and hold strategy. And then maturity and liquidity requirements. The question came up, what's the final maturity? So we're recommending bringing that back to 5 years. It's currently at 5.5 years. So no individual security can be purchased with more than a 5-year maturity. And that's the total sum of the recommended changes.
Thank you. Molly, any public comment?
We have none, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? I am just wondering, I always have a hard time with these maximums because, a lot of times they're read as targets. But outside of that, if there's a scenario, I'm just working with this, so the recommendation is to change from 50% maximum to 75 on money market funds. As we've talked about, we're using money market funds as a cash account.
Sure.
Right? If we continue in this same scenario where we're getting a lot more yield and return from the short term, from money markets, and we have a lot of spending, there could be a time where we want more than 75% in there as the bonds roll off, right? So are we constraining ourselves? Like, I'm just wondering, for a cash-like security, why is there a maximum?
Yeah, so that's really to intended to bring some balance to your duration. So to be completely subject to the Fed funds target or short-term rates would be a protection or a hedge against that. So as the Fed funds target comes down, it'll go down a quarter point next week according to most expectations. That will continue to drop. So your duration, the longer your duration is, the more protected you are from those short interest rate changes. And the more exposure you have on the short term just limits how much you can hedge out. So a ladder portfolio, for example, in a declining interest rate environment provides a total return that's greater than what a short return would be. So that would be an example of
Makes
where you
sense.
would take
Okay.
the baseline longer.
This is very unusual circumstance, though, where you've got, there's no liquidity premium or discount. I mean, it's crazy that you can have complete liquidity in the highest yielding instrument. It's very unusual, so.
Yeah, I mean, we've experienced the inverted yield curve longer than any historical period that I've been working in muni finance. So there has been great opportunities with that. It's a good opportunity when you have cash that comes in, but it is a challenging dynamic to manage through.
It doesn't look like we have to take a vote, Lucy, on that change? Okay. No. All right. Great, thanks, Mr.
Great,
Neufeld.
thank you.
Mr. Behrens is going to present 2 audit reports. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks. The first report here is the audit of the operations, maintenance, repair, replacement, and rehabilitation, commonly referred to as OMRR&R cost share. I'll just refer to it as operation and maintenance from here forth in my presentation. So as a little background, going back to 2009, when the district, they signed the master SERP agreement with the Corps. And it requires the district to develop a 5-year maintenance plan, which is updated annually. So that's a rolling 5-year. And what this does is it forecasts what the expenses are going to be during that next 5 years. But this projection was also expanded to include the maintenance for some non-CERT projects that are with the Corps that also have ongoing operating requirements in them. So for the 5-year plan for fiscal years 20 to 28 inclusive is $153 million. 70 million of that estimated for the district, 83 million of that for the Corps. I'll explain on a future slide why those numbers aren't equal. Here I just listed a few of the CERT projects that have been transferred when the projects are completed, and they get transferred to the operation and maintenance mode. And that is at the point at which we start doing the cost share on the operations and maintenance. And some of the early ones back 2014, 2016 is when the first projects started coming online. Then there's the non-CERT projects, the C-111 South Dade County projects, and the modified water delivery as well. And as you can see, where it has the Corps' obligation, these are not exactly 50-50. As a matter of fact, they range anywhere from 60 to as much as 100%. And here's a few of the projects that are projected to come online over the next few years, like the Indian River, Lagoon South, Biscayne Bay, and Caloosahatchee River, of course, a big one that's coming up. This gives you an idea and a picture of the trend in the reimbursement. Now, this just includes the Corps share that we have requested reimbursement for, where you see the blue bars here. These are the actuals up through 24, and then you have the projections for 25 through 27. Now, as you can see over on the left hand tables, in 9 years, the total has been a little over 50 million, and just in the next 3 years alone, it's going to be approximately 50 million just in the next 3 years. And as you can see, they tend to have jumps at certain points here. like between 24 and 25, and then 27, this is probably our, C-34 coming online. So the objective of the audit was to determine that we have requested reimbursement for all the eligible maintenance costs related to the SERP, as well as the non-SERP projects. So overall, we concluded that the district has an adequate process in place to ensure that eligibility for the expenses are tracked. However, we did identify some improvements we needed to strengthen the project further. The period covered from fiscal year 2019 through 2023. We had previously completed an audit of this subject back in 2018 for the from inception through the third quarter of 2018. Based on that audit, we've definitely seen some improvements that were made, that we still found some things where the current findings were similar to the findings in that report, such as some unclaimed expenses for vehicle and equipment, some unclaimed expenses for the new project features. One thing is, when the new project features come online, we need to start capturing the expenses for that when they come online. And there were some things we found where there was a gap between when they came online and when we started charging the expenses for them. Some unclaimed salary expenses, and in some cases, a incorrect indirect rate was used. This slide gives you a summary of the total of what our estimate was, almost $2.5 million. As you can see, the equipment and vehicle usage was the biggest one. We found a little bit of money, $41,000, that we also overbuilt, so this is a net number. So we made a total of 29 recommendations, and management concurred with all those recommendations. And with that, I'll take your questions.
Thanks, Tim. I should have mentioned that we'll take public comment and vote on the two audit reports after your second audit presentation. But any, for the committee, any questions on the first audit? Thanks, Tim. We move on to the review of construction change orders.
Okay, this review period was for October 1st, 24 through March 31st, 25, a 6-month period. We assessed whether the change orders were negotiated during that period of time, were negotiated in accordance with the contract's terms and conditions. We verified the cumulative change order amounts as a percentage of the original contract amount. And we compared the change order percentages to the industry benchmark and identified all the construction contract change orders that the governing board had authorized to make sure they were included. There were a total of 39 change orders executed during that period that encompassed 14 different contracts. The total was approximately $9.9 million. We reviewed a sample of the change orders to ensure that the essential documents were maintained in the e-builder system, and also identified all the governing board construction change orders that were through resolution. So the result is, when including all the change orders, as a percentage of the original contract was 26.9%. But when we excluded a few outliers, which I'll talk about on the next slide in a minute, the amount came in at 5.4%, which was well within the industry standards of the 8 to 14%. So here's the total of the outliers, 3 contracts. So you can see the total change order percentages were like 50 to almost 65%. In all 3 of these cases, there were significant changes in the scope of work. And that's why we take them out to see how it looks, without these 3 contracts, since they had significant changes in scope of work. We went through all the governing board agendas and minutes to identify all the change orders that the board had approved. They had approved a total of 3, there were 2 resolutions. Total was $3.6 million, and the executed change order amounts were also the same. So with that, I'll take any questions and comments.
Any questions or discussion from the committee? Molly, any public comment?
We have none, Mr. Chairman.
May I have a motion and a second?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We'll call the question. Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Passes unanimously. Tim, you're going to continue with the presentation of the external quality control review of the Office of the Inspector General.
Yeah.
This item's informational only and does not require approval by the committee. This is just a little bit of background. This is where other Inspector General teams sort of travel to us as we've traveled to them and report on your structure, right?
Right.
Okay.
And short title, we call them a peer review report. So that's the title of my presentation is. And first of all, the reason why we do this is that the Florida statutes that require the Inspector Generals perform audits in accordance with government auditing standards. These standards are promulgated by the Comptroller General of the United States. And one of the standards requires a peer review to be performed every 3 years to assess whether the audit organization's conformance with the applicable professional standards. Our 3-year period ended December 31st, 2024, and the review was performed during the week of 2018, August 18th. The review was performed through the Association of Local Government Auditors, known as ALGA, through their peer review program. And ALGA, it's a professional organization to support local government auditing and provides opportunities for networking with our counterparts in other governments in the country. And also, they provide continuing professional education. They have an annual conference. And they focus on improving auditing, the quality of audit in government, encourage and uphold the highest standards of professional ethics. So the way the program works, and you already kind of alluded to some of this, where they have a peer review coordinator, and the peer review coordinator, you contact them, and they find a couple of volunteers from other Inspector General and internal audit organizations within governments throughout the country. And for this review, we had Jay Poole from Chesapeake, Virginia, Christina Kern from City of Austin, Texas. And then our office, we agreed to reciprocate by offering our staff to perform peer reviews of other governments within the country. And I've put a list of some of the organizations that we have participated in our office. The first one I ever did was City of Atlanta, Georgia, a while back, Palm Beach County, Miami-Dade, Orange County, Hillsborough. Aviation, which is commonly known as Tampa Airport, City of Chattanooga, and recently in June of this year, I went to Northampton County Controller's Office in Pennsylvania. The only cost is the organization that's being reviewed pays for the travel expense of the peer review members. The review can result in 3 levels of compliance: a pass with deficiencies, or failure. And happy to inform you that our office received a pass compliance report. And here's a copy of the report, and I've expanded the last paragraph. This is what we call the opinion paragraph. That says, based on the results of our review, it is our opinion that the South Florida Water Management District Office of the Inspector General internal quality control system was adequately designed and operating effectively to provide reasonable assurance of compliance with government auditing standards and applicable legal and regulatory requirements for engagements during the period from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024. And that completes my presentation. Whoops.
Great, thanks, Tim. Molly, any public comment?
We have none, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the committee?
No, sir.
I'm going to ask you, Molly, if there's any public comment.
None.
Okay. So next Audit and Finance Committee meeting meets on December 11th here in the West Palm headquarters, and we can adjourn the meeting. Thanks for everybody. Thanks, everybody.